All right, we're live.
All right. Hi, everybody. How are you? So we are here at the Trend Tea House in Montclair, New Jersey, to celebrate 100 productions of New Jersey Revolution Radio. I think that's great stuff, right? It's a little nerve-wracking to be here. For the most part, I get to talk to a computer screen with my face and a couple of comrades. But tonight we get to come out and see if you're really bored or whether you're enjoying this or not. So I think that's going to help put on a better show. This isn't exactly 100 episodes, right? This is 109 episodes, but that doesn't have the same ring to it. We hope you enjoy the celebration. Anyway, I'd like to welcome my partner in New Jersey Revolution Radio, our art director and our other senior organizer, Heather Warburg.
For joining us tonight. It really takes something special to get me to drive all the way up to Canada for something. But 100 episodes really is a very special thing. And we would have never made it here if it weren't for all of you guys. I want to thank all of our awesome contributors and content providers. You guys, we have Lark here, we have Pat, we have Christian. I think that's the people we have so far. But our content providers, you guys are amazing. We love you.
Yes, thank you. Give yourselves a round of applause, please.
I really also want to express my deep gratitude for everyone who supported us financially here on the show. It's very challenging to start a media outlet and say, we're not going to take any corporate money, because essentially that means we don't get any money. So we totally rely on donations from grassroots people, our friends, our comrades, and you guys are really coming through for us, so we really appreciate you, and that definitely should get a round of applause for all of our donors. We're here to be your media outlet. We're here for the activist community, and that's all we're thinking about, is to be the kind of media outlet that you do not find everywhere else, that cover the stories you never see anywhere else, and really speak up as an anti-capitalist voice. And strangely, a lot of people don't want to support an anti-capitalist voice in the media, but we're building something really special here. Of course, I also want to thank my husband, who puts up with all of my flights of fancy. And I want to thank everybody who's supporting us, but I do need to ask you to do one more thing to help support us tonight. If everybody could get your phone out and go onto our Facebook page right now and find this live stream on our Facebook page and click on share.
How do I do that?
You go to New Jersey Revolution Radio, there's a search bar, click on the Facebook page, you'll see the live stream, hit the share button and say something nice.
Oh, yes. Okay. You'll see a picture of Brian and I on the live stream, right about what we're doing right now. And share that with all of your networks, and because that really helps us to build this audience. We're growing faster than we might have thought we would, but we need every little bit of share that we can get. New Jersey Revolution Radio has kind of been a long time coming in a lot of ways, and it's also sort of been a whirlwind in how quickly it's all coming together. It feels like ages that we've been talking about how corporate media refuses to cover us, and how our candidates never get this coverage that the duopoly candidates get, or how local stories just fall away if there's not a money angle to be made from them. And if you have an anti-capitalist message, it's so hard to get coverage. So an activist-centric media outlet has been something we've needed for a really long time. We've been talking about it for a really long time. And if no one else is going to cover us, we just have to do it ourselves. And that's what we're all about here tonight, is building something ourselves for ourselves. The actual development of NJRR, though, has been way faster than I think either one of us ever imagined. It was only back in March that Brian decided to record himself ranting in his car on the drive to work one day and post it online for everyone to hear. But I immediately saw the potential in what he was doing. And this was pretty much, I forced my way in, whether Brian wanted me here or not. But it's something I'm really passionate about. And honestly, I could not be involved with something like this. I'm still surprised that anyone listens to my shows. But for whatever reason, I really want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to share with you what it is that inspires me. And I hope it inspires you as well. We're all so much more powerful than we give ourselves credit for. And I bet none of you really think that you're inspiring. That nobody who is really inspiring thinks that they're doing anything special. But it's really you guys that inspire me. And I know I'm a mess. I have social anxiety, a fear of public speaking. You know, I had to take a Xanax before I started the stream tonight. And yes, I understand why that might be a slightly questionable profession I'm choosing, being a media provider. But I really want to say that if I'm up here doing it, then any of you can do it. Everyone can be an organizer. Everyone can be an activist. Right? That's what And I'm willing, even with the social anxiety and the horrible fear of public speaking, to get up here. Because if I can convince one person that they're powerful enough to do this, then I've done my job. I've helped spread the revolution. And if you can become a grassroots activist for change, really, you can change the world. Who knows what thought or what expression it is that you have that may spark even someone else. It's this virtuous circle of doing awesome things. So that's why I'm so passionate about this. And there'll be setbacks, and there'll be heartbreaks. There always are. You're not going to be perfect. Going to screw up quite a lot. See how I'm having nice language here because we're in a public venue here.
Are there any children in the room? Fuck it.
Which does bring me to my final topic. And I've always had people ask me if I regret when I joined the Green Party all the drama that ultimately came of it. And I admit I went through some pretty dark times. But ultimately I don't regret a minute of it because it's how I met all of you guys. And it's also, it's where I met my partner in crime here, and also one of the most inspiring men I've ever met. I still don't know how he does it, but he makes everyone around him a better person, and do more than they ever thought they were capable of. I'd like to tell people, when I volunteered to join the Green Party, I volunteered to make some signs, and maybe take some pictures, because art is my day job. And somehow after a 15-minute conversation with Brian, I was county chair of Atlantic County, and I really just don't know how that happened.
You had all the qualifications. You showed up.
I had no organizing experience whatsoever. And he's like, oh, just go do it. It'll be great. And he somehow makes the impossible possible. So that's why I'm honored to be here tonight with my comrade and my brother, Brian Powers.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. And, it definitely wouldn't be the same without Heather on board. Organizers tend to be jacks of all trades, masters of none. We have a lot of great ideas and a lot of pieces to the puzzle, but unless we can get other people involved, we can't make anything happen because they're not really good at anything. And so when I started putting together a podcast, as Heather said, it was simply me at the tail end of a nervous breakdown recording myself driving to work. Not exactly the most appealing angle, right? But it's definitely, when Heather got involved, you can see that beautiful website that she put up. You can see these beautiful graphics. Wine, Women, and Revolution is our best performing show. So while, I had a little bit of an idea, it's involving Heather that it really took off and started to become something special. So thanks, Heather, for everything that you've done for New Jersey Revolution. And I'm sitting in a room with a lot of people that have been doing this longer than I have. I started doing activism with 15 now, maybe just a little over 4 years ago. Prior to that, I was just a labor union guy. I was a shop steward. I got into advocating for the working class because I was in a shop full of people that I cared about, and I wanted to stick up for them. I didn't have much experience doing political organizing, but I came on the scene and helped start 15 Now. And I think a lot of people, maybe even people in this room, wondered who the fuck is this wise ass who thinks he can run a coalition? And I know that sentiment was out there. But I'll tell you that from the activist community, from the anti-capitalist community, whether you be a socialist, an anarchist, a progressive or whatever, I felt a lot of love and a lot of support. The People's Organization for Progress, Socialist Party, Green Party, all of my comrades from these organizations embraced me and taught me the things I needed to do. And 15 Now, while it hasn't met its ultimate goal, had a lot of success in bringing anti-capitalist activists around the state of New Jersey together. So again, thanks to all of you for continuing to organize in those communities. And that's the way I looked at it, was communities. I saw, when I first started organizing, not having the roots in the activist community, that we had all these little different groups fighting for very, very similar values. Everybody who listens or is a fan of our work wants health care for every person on the face of the earth. They want to make sure that everybody is fed. They want to make sure that our children have good education. They want to make sure that we have leisure time to paint or do art or do music, and if that's our passion, to be able to pursue. Nobody, even if you're with one group or the other, all of us agreed on those things. So when I started 15 Now, I just thought, listen, I got an issue that pretty much everybody agrees on. We need to raise the minimum wage in the state. And while many of us may have goals of, owning the means of production or a Marxist state or a stateless society, we all agreed that a stepping stone to one of those things was to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and we got together. And at that same time, there was a movement in the liberal side of politics, the Democratic Party, if you will, the nonprofit organizations, these front groups that unions pay for and hide behind to get some legislation done. They popped up. And I went to the very first meeting of a 15 Now Coalition thing. I was new, I was nervous. There was all these powerful people in the room. And, as we started giving our presentation, it was myself and a younger comrade, we were prepared, we had notes, we had report backs, we were ready to go and get this coalition. And the liberals in that room proceeded to talk over us, step over us, come up with bad ideas, tap on their cell phones, and pretend like we didn't exist. How many people are involved in 15 Now? I know, I see Pat's back there and all these guys. You know how they treated us. They wanted our bodies at rallies. They wanted us walking out for Democrats and praising them on stage. But the last thing they wanted to do was any grassroots organizing with anybody that wasn't going to vote for a Democrat. And as most of you know, my work, 15 Now's work, New Jersey Revolution Radio's, we do not support the Democratic Party in any way, shape, or form. And so they weren't going to let us have a voice, even though we were speaking to material needs of working class people. I don't give a shit what the state Senate wants to pass. And I sure as shit don't give a crap what Steve Sweeney wants to pass. I give a shit about my community and our communities and the things that we're fighting for. And that's where our demands come from, not from the political class. So while I saw that attitude taken on by my comrades, that we need to fight for material conditions, I saw at the very same time the Democratic Party talk about the liberal values and the possibilities what they could do in the system. And I'd rather spend my time with you, because you're the dreamers and you're the ones that are going to push those can't-do-its to make something special happen. And NJR is an extension of that. NJR is now the next level of organizing, something that we can do, we can take advantage of as a community, we can talk about our different projects, our different work, and draw new people in. This community is growing. And the difference between this and all the other podcasts out there is that it is a community. This isn't just one person doing the podcast in their car on the way to work anymore. These are people working towards shared values and shared goals. And even though we push on it from different directions at times, we are pushing towards the similar goals. And I'm looking forward to continue to building that. The inspiring work that I've done over the last 5 years with you is seeing grassroots activists ignore what the system tells them is possible and do what needs to be done anyway. And our first panel is going to feature a few activists from those kinds of causes. So I want to welcome up to the stage with us Jacqui Wenzel. She's from Ocean Township, New Jersey, and she's going to talk about saving 32 acres. Please welcome Jacqui. And then via Zoom, we're going to be joined by Heather Gordon as well to talk about her work down in Ventnor with the Randy Alston campaign.
Can you hear us, Heather? Unmute yourself.
Yes, I can hear you.
And bring up your camera.
There she is.
There's
Everybody
Heather.
sees Heather in we're in Ventnor, right? Say hi to Heather.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, sit
You
over,
can just sit there.
over
You just see
there.
that.
Right? Yeah, so no one's blocking Heather. Okay, so Heather, I wanted to talk to. As many of you may have followed, we had a story with Randy down in Ventnor where Whoa, what are you doing? Where Randy she's a woman of color, and had her daughter in a very predominantly white school. And during a lesson about Harriet Tubman, the teacher said some slaves wanted to be slaves, some slave owners were really good people, and some people had to pick the cotton anyway. This was the 10-year-olds. So Randy obviously had some problems with this. She went to her community. The community tried to shut her down. A member of the school board was the local chief of police. They started intimidating her. And I actually met Randy through my comrade Henry out here in the audience.
Henry Hank Green, everybody. Please.
Yeah, give it. So through organizing around her story, we had a bunch of people that came to the last school board meeting of the year. And it was probably one of the most powerful things I've been a part of in a long time. That hearing the voices of people that showed up to speak on behalf of Randy really was emotional. And Heather Gordon was one of those really amazing voices that we had there. Really, without Heather, it would not have been anywhere near as emotional and powerful as it was. So I just wanted to thank Heather for that. And what made you decide to come out and speak that night?
My daughters go to that school, and my daughters are actually two of the only half African American children that attend that school. But even if they weren't, I think we're past the point where, as white people, we can just sit back and let people of color keep fighting this fight alone. If you see something that's happening like that, particularly in your own community, because that's where change really starts, you have to speak up. And it did not earn me any friends. And my daughters actually still attend that school. And it made things awkward for me. But what's more awkward is to be a little black girl sitting in class being told these lies. And the thing about that is that it really permeates all of our culture, and it affects the way these children see the world. And so to not speak out would have been a lot harder than speaking out was.
What you said down there was really beautiful and really moving to anybody that hasn't seen it. You know, we did live stream it, and I'm so grateful that you put yourself out there like that. I think you hit on something that we've heard before, and I believe there was a comedian, I think it was Chris Rock, that said, you know, that racism isn't black people's problem. It's our problem as white people. We're the ones that are racist, and we need to address that in our own communities. You know, and I know that I'm preaching to the choir here, but even with our own organizations, even within the Green Party, we dealt with racism and its effects. You know, and I think just because you're on the left, just because you're progressive, just because you're a socialist, doesn't mean you don't have racist tendencies. You know, it doesn't mean that this society hasn't ingrained racism into you. And so I think the more we talk about it as white people, the more comfortable it'll become to fix these problems. As Heather said, she's uncomfortable in her own community, and all she did was speak out and say the truth and ask for justice. And that's not something you should be uncomfortable saying. So thanks, Heather, because I think it made some progress just doing what you did, right?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Heather. You are very amazing. And you could tell from this panel, it was an entirely white school board as well. Mm-hmm. I sent a picture because I went to an earlier meeting to Brian. He's like, "Why does this look like my Aunt Mabel's funeral with all these people around?"
It really did. It looked like every funeral I've ever been to.
And you can tell these are people who have never been called out on their privilege before. And the white fragility was definitely on display that night. But honestly, Heather, you made me cry that night. Like, I was wiping tears away, and I know you made a lot of people cry that night with your words that were beautiful. And I've interviewed Heather before, so definitely check out the interview with Heather, because she's also an amazing author. She writes pretty awesome books, and she also ran last year for Assembly.
Oh, I didn't know that. Cool.
And is there anything else you'd like to chime in about?
I think those people were so surprised on the school board because we don't really realize that the truth is that we're all racist. As white people, we have these things that are so ingrained, and it doesn't necessarily make us bad people. But what took them aback so much is that it didn't exist in their minds because it's not something that they confront. And so I think the difficult part about this is to try not to hate people for their ignorance and instead try to educate them, because when we're on this side of things and we're so woke, as the kids would say, it's really easy to be very frustrated with people and to not understand why they don't understand. But the truth is it comes from ignorance, and then ignorance breeds fear, and fear breeds hatred. But at the end of the day, most of us really want the same things. Most of us are pretty good people. And so I think that if we can bridge that gap and tell the stories that need to be told and remember not to hate people for their ignorance and instead try to educate them, that we can move things a little further along.
We got involved with this, and this is one of the things New Jersey Revolution Radio would like to do more of. I know, some people think when they think politics, they think elections. But politics is way more than elections, and the more important stuff does when you do things like what Heather did, speak out to the school board, support people in your community who are suffering from oppression, or save some open space. And I don't want to, we're going to come back to you, Heather, because I do have more questions, so please don't go away. But I do want to talk about what Jacqui's doing, because it's been a while since you've been around, right?
Right. Well, I think it's almost a year. I think it's almost a year.
Not that long, maybe 6 months or so.
Well, it was
Since
before
we
the
talked.
summer, before the,
That's true.
no,
That's true.
Since we spoke last,
So-
but I'm saying when we first met and we did the first podcast, it was probably almost a year.
Something like that. You were very early on, and just so you don't know, you're from Ocean Township, right?
Ocean
in
Township,
Monmouth
New Jersey.
County.
Yes, Monmouth County.
And if you picture her township as this table, and I took this little tiny piece of paper right here, and I threw it in the middle of that table there, that's about the size of the green space that's left in Ocean County. When you look at a satellite map, it's asphalt and concrete. And there's this little teeny green speck of 32 acres of land, and they will put fucking Wawa there. Like, we need another goddamn Wawa. And Jacqui, you've taken up that cause. And now, I know some people have heard it before, but this started out, you basically just went to the city council and wanted to be heard, and the reaction was not exactly receptive.
No. And I bring up our first meeting because I felt very inspired after we spoke. Maybe part of it was like hearing my voice on radio and going like, oh my God, this is real. Like I'm actually out here, advocating for the trees. And it was great. Then we had a fundraiser this summer. We invited, and had music, Brian showed up and we had an amazing musical talent that came in from Asbury Park to play. And, a lot of the community has been very much against this development. Basically, it's 32 acres of historic farmland that hasn't been touched ever. It was at one time a campground for Native American Indians. It later was the Edamole farmhouse and parkland. And it was connected to many more acres than the 32. And the township actually did acquire part of it for a park. But this corner property of 32 acres got rezoned through a very crooked deal where developers were paying off government officials within our township, and that particular mayor wound up going to jail for taking payoffs from developers, specifically zoning for them. So that, at the very core, is why I fight so hard to keep this land green, because it was never meant to be developed. And had it not been from criminal intent, it never would have been rezoned this way. And it was rezoned specifically for this commercial developer. The people that I guess were involved in that transaction, I felt when they went to jail, it should have been rescinded, and it hadn't been. And now it's vulnerable, very vulnerable, to be developed again. So many people in the community are against it, but it's very hard to gather them all to really, to instill that we have power in numbers. We just have to all show up. People come to the corner, and we did this 2 weekends ago. Yeah. We all came with our signs. Many of the people have invested in buying these signs. I tell them now, don't give me $6 for the sign. Go to GoFundMe and make a donation, because for us, which I'll get into in a minute, we have a lawsuit against the township for putting a new zoning on this land, which is allowing the Wawa gas station, because it was never zoned for that. Even under the criminal act, it was never zoned for that. So it's a Wawa gas station with a convenience store, a 4-story hotel, and 70 connected urban-style townhouses, which is completely inconsistent with what's in our neighborhood. What that land was zoned for, it did have some, commercial zoning in the master plan, should it ever be developed, for 40 single-family homes, which is consistent with the community. But 70 connected townhouses is really very different, and that's really a lot of what is holding our lawsuit to its legitimacy. Is that it's in the zoning changes that these changes are substantially consistent. Well, that was the wrong word to use.
So the signs have had an impact though because people are stealing them, right?
Well, yes.
So you know you're having an impact when your opposition reacts.
Yes, and the signs have been amazing because it is a website, so it's save32acres.org. I will not be able to go into all the details of the history of the land, but there's some really interesting things going on in our lawsuit. But people they see the sign, they go to save32acres.org, and they get involved. And I have my phone number there. I personally deliver all the signs because I'm looking to hope that the person who wants the sign may be out in their driveway. I knock on their door. They're not always home, but when they are home, it's wonderful because we get to, I really hear their passion and they really care.
Heather, prior to this incident happening, you've run for office before and been an activist before. Have you run other drives that gave you some experience, that gave you a little confidence to step up in that meeting and say what you said?
No, what happened is Trump was elected president, and then I
Stop
dug
bringing that up.
into American politics, and I realized it went so far beyond Trump that the atrocities that the American government, the American military, really at the behest of corporations and billionaires that they've committed is just so far-reaching and so pervasive, and you can't. I've always wanted to leave the world a little better for my children, and I wish that we would all do that. And so then it's it's kind of like a rabbit hole. You dive down it, and then there's no way to get back out.
I feel that.
Definitely.
And Jacqui, so you've got some next steps. You're not done yet, but
No, so
I do want to stress that this was the first time you ever did something like this, right?
Oh, I've never. Yes, no. I grew up in the 70s, and I always wanted to be a hippie when I grew up.
It's not that hard.
My dad.
What are your barriers? Were you forced showered every?
I lived in a quite conservative town. It was pretty traditional. I actually grew up in Belleville, New Jersey, not far from here, and I was too young to really be a hippie. So my dad used to drive us to New York. He'd drive us to Greenwich Village and sit in the car, and we'd look at people with long hair and beards go by. I know that sounds ridiculous, but that's what we would do on a weekend.
Hey, that was me. That was you. Oh.
So anyway, then I, grew up in the 80s, and I was, trying to have a career, which I have now, and I've enjoyed a long career in the fashion industry. And, but fashion, it changes every 6 months, and even though there's been some revolutionary fashion, it's a different business. It's not necessarily always, for the good of the people. Even though I shouldn't say that. Fashion does make people feel good. A lot of times it does put us in a good mood when we go out and buy a new outfit. Yeah. But anyway, it was not a time that I felt any longer that I could really protest and really stand up because everything seemed pretty much status quo. So this fighting for this land, I've gone in and walked that land, and I really do feel, and it was Native American land at one time. I know this sounds dramatic, but it's true. Besides, what drives me is like fighting a wrong with the criminal intent. I really feel moved when I go into that land. I mean, I've said this. When I'm in the middle of the trees and you look up at the sky, and any one of you will feel this if you ever go to a park or you're out camping, and you look up at the sky, it really feels like nature's cathedral. You feel that. You get that sense of when you're in an amazing church and there's the high steeple and light comes through the stained glass. Like, that's how we've recreated it, but it's out there. It's in nature. You just go sit in some open space and you'll feel that. And I felt that, and I felt like I'm going to fight as hard as I can to save that land because there's very little of it. We're in New Jersey, the Garden State, and we're losing it all over the place, not just Ocean Township. Developers have just bombarded our area. I mean, all of Monmouth County, as Brian, as you said, even like I keep saying, redevelop the things that didn't work. There's a lot of development from the 60s and 70s, these sort of strip malls that are more than half vacant. So do something with that, but not take down more nature. And we need to breathe.
Yes.
We need to cool off from the sun.
I enjoy breathing.
Yeah.
So moving forward, Heather, what's up next for you? What's your next project going to be?
I think I'm just trying to do as much good as I can, where I can. I gave the run for politics, and while I think I could run another campaign and do pretty well with it, I don't think that's where I would like to make a beast. So I'm trying to do it with art. I'm trying to, like I said, in my community, do the best I can, advocate for children. It's really, it's funny because it was all Native American land. All of America was.
That's a very good point.
I think once you learn, once your eyes are open, you kind of just, it can be overwhelming, and so you really just have to be as good to people as you can when you can, and call out the wrongs when you see them. And that's really just where I'm at. So.
And you do tackle some pretty tough concepts in your books, even though, you know, it's vampires and werewolves and stuff. You deal with some, you know, it's almost allegorical of some deeper issues in society that you use vampires and werewolves and fairies to signify. So.
Yeah, I think stories, you know, so powerful the way we tell our history, which is why I couldn't not say anything about that, the history lesson that was taught at my children's school, because the stories that we tell, I mean, they really build the world that we live in. And when you're telling only a certain kind of people's stories, the rest of the people are erased, and then we also dehumanize whole groups of people. And we, you know, forget that they are human and that they have just as much right to live and to be free as we do. And so I've come back around to the art, and I think that's my calling as an artist, to try to, just whoever will read my stuff, to try to put it in. When you turn them into vampires and werewolves, and they're like, hey, they don't like these werewolves because they're werewolves, it's kind of, it runs parallel to what the things that we do. It just takes a little bit of people are automatically insulted, particularly white people, when you bring up white privilege. And the thing is, it's not an insult. It's just a fact. It just means that you have an advantage over other people for something that you had nothing to do with and no control over. And that they face obstacles that you won't face simply because of things they don't have any control over. So that's where I'm at with it. I'm just trying to make art that's true to me and try to get better at it, and then also to try to be a better person and be good to everybody I come in contact with.
Thanks a lot for everything you do.
So
you have a lot of support here with New Jersey Revolution Radio. And Jacqui, what's next?
What's next? Well, we did bring the township to court, to the local court in Freehold, and we went pro se because, as you said, when you try and do things, everything costs money, and when you're doing it on your own, you know, attorneys. We had one attorney who said early on, well, it's about $30,000 to $50,000 if you want to see this through. And I said, well, we don't want to mortgage our house for this. I'll be living in the 32 acres. But what can we do? And, you know, people, like I said, with the signs, people have donated. They know, you know, they're giving donations. But it has been difficult to come up with what it will take to really have an attorney is difficult. So we went what they call pro se. We went to Freehold, and we were encouraged, even though the judge dismissed our case, he said he dismissed it on procedure, not merit. So my husband and I left that meeting, and we thought, well, it wasn't on, you know, he sees the merit in our argument, but we everything had to be certified, which we did pay a certified transcriber, but we didn't realize it had to have the stamp. We paid for it, but it had never been stamped. So when we handed in the paperwork, procedurally, it wasn't stamped. So we then were encouraged by New Jersey Appleseed, which is a wonderful organization based in Newark, New Jersey. They, you know, been giving us some sort of pro bono advice at times. And they said, well, you know what? Since you have merit on your case, go to try appellate court. Go to Trenton. Try and appeal this. And we did. And the judge in Trenton saw it on merit as well, and they are going to have our case go forward. So we're very excited about it. And in fact, my husband is home right now working on the paperwork. He's reading up, and he, you know, we are going pro se again, and which is tricky. But we're hoping, in a way, if we get enough attention on this subject and enough people show up and people get involved, that maybe just through, you know, public awareness and PR and this type of thing, as we're doing today, can raise enough awareness that, you know, it will seem like the right thing to do to save that land and to just, you know, develop somewhere else.
Thank you very much again for all that you've done. I think that you've inspired people, and I know I'm preaching to the choir. I'm sitting in a room full of activists, and all of us have stood up at one time or another and taken on authority, taken on their city council, taken on their school board, or whatever they need to do to advocate for their community. But for those watching at home, it helps to know that this is not a special skill. This is nothing that we just had a passion and we saw something wrong going on, and we work to fix it. So I know that people like Heather and Jacqui are too few and far between, but they're just the same. They're just people, and they're just taking on challenges in their community. And we owe them all thanks for that, and thanks for coming up to Montclair tonight. Heather, thank you for zooming in, and we'll see you all again soon.
Good night.
Thank you very much.